Good evening. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Please note that the opinions voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network nor our sponsors. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Reaching all the way back to 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition. Here is your host of Fate Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. You are listening to Fate Mag Radio, and I am Kat Hobson, your host. I don't know about all of the other people in the world today, but I have been so blissfully spoiled by my family for Mother's Day. I hope everyone else is enjoying their day as well. It doesn't just have to be moms. It's also dads who serve as moms. There's an awful lot of them that I know. And anyone who is involved in the lives and loving of their children, wherever they are. I hope that you have just had a wonderful day. I have been looking forward to tonight's show for some time now. Cathryn McIntyre is an author. She has written 2 books. They're actually fairly unusual memoirs. The most recent one, The Thoreau Whisper, channeling the spirit of Henry David Thoreau, is something that just blew me away. I am a Thoreau fan, and he has been important to our family. I was blown away by this book, and I'm going to let Cathryn describe it to you, and we will put some questions out there if you have any. There are 2 chat rooms available. They're both monitored. They're both free. One is at Spreaker. If you're listening on your mobile, then you're already here. The other is at WBHM-D as in David, B as in boy.com. You'll see listen live, and you'll also see live chat as an option. Click on it. It'll take you there. You can sign in however you like. You can even be a mystery guest. But put your questions in there, and we will see if we can get answers for you. I am very pleased to welcome Cathryn McIntyre. Hi, Cathryn. How are you? I didn't even finish getting through your bio yet.
It's okay. I'm well. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm pleased to be speaking
Good.
with you.
Well, happy Mother's Day to you. I forgot to say that earlier.
Thank you. And are you a mom?
I am not. No.
Well, I had not seen any mention of that, so that's why I hadn't said anything. I didn't want to put my foot in it.
No, that's okay.
But I'm really pleased that we are finally here talking.
Yeah. I'm happy to be here.
When we very first started communicating, I was not aware of all of the things that you have had going on in your life. I was aware of the writing, obviously, and but you're an awful lot of things. You are a natural psychic. You're a clairvoyant.
Yeah.
You're an astrologer, which I find fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
You are a sometimes ghost investigator, and you blog about ghostly experiences
I like
in
to put the word
Maine.
sometimes in there.
I like that.
Yeah, I do blog about my ghostly experiences. This is something I add to my website. It's kind of fun. It tends to be the most popular pages on the website as well. So it should be no
People
surprise.
are fascinated by that.
Yeah.
And, I'm actually fascinated because another author was led to an investigation who confirmed
Yes.
your findings and then wrote about it in his book. Greg Latimer
Yes.
wrote Ghost of the Booth Bay Region.
Yeah, and he featured one of his chapters about what I had experienced and written about. So it was a lot of fun. That was an interesting time, yeah.
Well, no doubt. I think that's way cool. But
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
but you studied the literary history of Concord, Massachusetts,
Yeah.
for like over 30 years, both in university settings and just on your own, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What led you to do that?
I don't, I think, what, fate. That.
Well, here you are.
And here I am, yes. I think that's the answer. No, I just, as a kid, just as a very psychic kid, and I mean, one day I just said to my mother, I'm going to live in Boston. I'll be moving there. And she's looking at me like, why? Why would you go there? What's the, why on earth, we're in Michigan. And she said, why would you go to Boston? And it was just, I knew that was the area I had to go to. The first time I came out, I was in college and came out with a friend, and we went into Concord, and that was the first time. And as I wrote about it in Honor in Concord, I said, I felt like I was returning to a place that in my soul I had always known. It was just like that was the place. And when I returned from that trip, I began reading about Thoreau. And then it just, kind of went on. I had been an English major in college, and then although I don't remember reading a whole lot about him or the Transcendentalists then, but I sure did after that trip. And then I moved out here 2 years after that, and had just, sort of picked up from there.
Well, were you not well versed in Thoreau prior to that?
I was not well versed in him. No, I wouldn't say so. I was trying to remember when I was first reading about him. I mean, other than like in high school when I was like everyone else who didn't want to read those books, and then eventually came around to, I was more interested, I think, in his life than I was in reading his actual books. And that was one thing that was intriguing to me at the time that the channeling was beginning and all of that it was sort of like years had gone by when I was traveling two paths. One of them was my literary interests, and the other one was my spiritual interests. So I had moved out to this area, and I was very definitely enthralled by Concord, very much into the literary history there, reading all about the authors, not just Thoreau, but Emerson, the Alcotts, Hawthorne. I mean, all the books I could get about them, I would read. So I wasn't really reading like Walden or reading reading Thoreau's works, but I was reading about him, and he was always the one I was sort of most interested in, but I still read about all of it. It's sort of like, it was such a magical time, and I was really excited about that, like most people are who come to this area and come to the town. There's just sort of a magic quality about it. And so I had done that, and so that was sort of one side of the equation. And the other side was I was pursuing a spiritual path. So I was in the New Age places, and in the 80s and 90s around here, there were a lot of metaphysically inclined New Age bookstores, that kind of thing. And one of them was Unicorn Books, which was in Lexington when I first moved here, and then they came down into Arlington, this massive old Victorian house, and it was just wonderful. And there were a period of times when my periods of spiritual growth were taking place in classes and things that were taking place in that house, totally separate and apart again from what I was doing in the literary path. Well, at a certain point when, after the events had taken place and in 2006, it sort of brought about this connection with Thoreau finally came through, and it was all going to take place, I realized that the answers I'd been seeking on that New Age path were what the Transcendentalists had been talking about all along. Mm-hmm. And yet I had sort of missed that element of it because I was so into reading about their lives and how interesting they were. I never really realized that the truth I was seeking on the other road was there with them all along, and that was really the message that was the most important was something they already had. So it's kind of intriguing. So it kind of, it was like the two paths came together for me. and at that time, and that's when this book started to come about, and also Honor and Concord in a sense.
Well, I find it fascinating because so many people, as they start out on their life journeys, you were fortunate that you had already been led to where you were supposed to be. That doesn't always happen. People flounder sometimes, as everybody knows. But I also find it fascinating that transcendentalism is what most people are seeking.
Yeah.
They don't recognize that term. They don't recognize what it is that they're actually seeking. But when they find it, it's so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a natural fit. And when I found Thoreau, I was probably about 17.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually shared a copy of Walding Pond to someone that I cared a lot about. Mm-hmm. Because I just felt like, you're so circling the globe here. If you can just find peace in yourself and get your groove on with this, I think you'll be so much happier. Mm-hmm. And they were.
Yeah.
And they unfortunately died very young, but when they passed, that book was on their bedside table.
Mm-hmm.
So it mattered to them too.
Yeah. Well, it is so important. I think that Thoreau touches on these fundamental truths in a way nobody else does. And when you read them, I think we recognize them for what they are. It sparks that thing within us. And then, we understand, it's like, of course, duh, of course, I've known that all along, that God's within, the spark of life, the divinity is within us. And when we connect to that, the real fundamental of transcendentalism is connecting to that divine source within you and allowing that to guide you. And, that's the direction that you want to follow. If you wonder where truth is, if you wonder, where your peace is, where joy is, it all comes through that internal channel, in a sense, that connects you to that, your own higher source, and to the divine, as Thoreau would put it.
Absolutely. Well, when you got to the area, how old were you when you actually got to Concord?
By the time I moved, I was actually 25 at that point. It had taken me a little extra time to graduate college, and I was working full-time and finishing up, and so it took a little extra time. So I was 25 when I came out, and it was interesting because one of the first things I did was go to a past life regression course that was offered in Cambridge, and the man who was teaching the course was he was offering readings. So I said, well, I got to sign up for that. And next thing I know, I was at his house, which was a house that was near Walden Pond out in Lincoln, Massachusetts. And I'm sitting there with him. I write about it in the book. He had folding chairs out in his backyard, and the grass hadn't been mowed. So we're out there in the long grass with the folding chairs and a tape recorder, and he's reading me. And in that reading, he said to me, there's a spirit here, and he wants to work with you. He wants to work through you. And at the time, I had just spent 4 years working in an oncologist's office in Michigan, in Lansing, and I had watched, been witness to the death of numerous people. I mean, probably, 100, 150 or something in the 4 years. And so I came away from there, and I was like, the first thought I had when he said, there's someone here that wants something from you, was like, oh my gosh, they've followed me, all the spirits from all the patients in Michigan.
That would have been terrifying, yes. They're all here.
I just I had this response of like, oh no, more spirits. Because I had, I'd had several encounters with those patients after they died as well at that time. But when I left Michigan, it was like, okay, enough of that, and then I get out there and he's like, oh no, there's more dead people that want to talk to you. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do this right now. And so I just kind of walked away from that, didn't think anything of it. And then I had the tape, so I played it back even once or twice in the year or so after, and then I put it away. And I didn't think about that tape again until about 2007, which was about a year into the channeling. And one day I was suddenly like, oh wow, that reading. Oh wow, he did say. It was like, oh, he did say there was a man, a spirit there that wanted to work through me. Oh my gosh, So I went digging around and sure enough found the tape and played it, and and it was like, oh my God, it was Thoreau. And that's all I could think. It was like, it was Thoreau. Yes. So I really honestly believe now that was the beginning of it, was really as soon as I arrived, was him saying, hey, I'm here, I'm ready, and I was certainly not ready because I had many more years to learn and things to go through before I would be ready,
but he
do
just
this.
let you know.
Yeah, so I feel like he was just sort of, there alerting me, but I hadn't fully awakened yet. And, I really think looking back on it, having had the experience, having known Brad Dean and had him be a part of this, that it was something that was meant to be. I feel like it was part of our contracts, however you want to put it. This was something that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But at that point, I was nowhere near ready for it. So it took years before I got myself in a point where I could do it. And before I was to meet Brad, who was certainly a huge part of this, and for it all to come together the way it did, it would be, over 20 years later when it finally did. So.
Isn't that amazing? The plan was already in place. Whatever agreements y'all had made were already in place. Mm-hmm. And it still took 20 years.
Yeah. I take the blame for some of that. being sort of the way I am. But I also think that there was a lot to do with it. Maybe it was supposed to be that way.
Oh, you know it. I mean, everything happens the way it's supposed to.
I like to think that sometimes, but I don't always believe it. But yeah, I do think it had to wait some time for it to happen. But mm-hmm. In looking back, I thought, I wish I had known more. I wish it could have happened before Brad passed on, and
I know
that we could have done it from here. Like we could work together and had this happen. But in fact, it didn't. It took for him to cross over and then come back for me to sort of awaken to it and be prepared for it to happen. So,
well,
but there was a lot. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that while I know that was so incredibly painful, and still is, I think, it is the path. We all follow our path.
Yeah.
And he was who had softened your heart and opened your mind to the possibility mm-hmm. before you were ever ready. And he was who was able to guide you mm-hmm. still, and still does.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes I don't pay attention personally.
Yeah.
And I need that guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this was something that, while I know you miss him horribly, was his role mm-hmm. to be your mentor and guide while living as well as later. Mm-hmm. Not to mention your friend.
Yes. And I tend, I believe that, we've many times have all known each other before, who we see who are, the key members of our lives. We've done this play before in different roles in different ways. And I tend to think that was the case with Brad and I, that we had known each other before, and that, and had known Thoreau as well, and that this was all sort of planned out. I mean, that's the best I can make of it, the way it came about. is to think, well, we must have all known each other. We must have, we must have planned this, because it certainly happened. Could have been more perfect in a sense for how it happened. And in those years that I hadn't yet met Brad, I was getting all kinds of signs from Thoreau, which I also write about a bit in the book. Mm-hmm. Some of them really funny, but in Honor and Concord.
I'm going to have to stop you for a moment, because we're already at our first break. I can't believe this. But we will be right back. And I want to continue this thought, picking up with recognizing it in honor of Concord. So, everybody, we'll be right back. We'll catch you on the flip side.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome! What?
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. And I am so enjoying my conversation with Cathryn McIntyre. And I hope you are too, because she is really someone that I have anticipated getting an opportunity to interview for some time. And all of y'all know that our interviews are not really Q&A or anything like that. They're just conversations. And this is one of the reasons I've been so excited to have you, Cathryn, is just to have this conversation.
Great.
So
I'm excited to be here.
We were discussing paths and timing, and
I was just talking about there was a lot of sort of preliminary in my life for this to happen as well, which some of it I wrote about in Honor and Concord, where I would go see my friend George the psychic in Salem, and he at one time, we're having a little reading, and he says to me, "Who's that guy at Walden Pond? Who's that guy who lived at Walden?" And I looked at him and I said, "Thoreau." And the minute I said that word, there was this rush of energy into the room, and I felt it just move right through me. And he said to me, "Did you see?" Like he said, "Did you feel that?" And he was like shocked because he's seen it. And I was like, "Yes, whoa," like what was that? And it was funny later because I think it was clear to both George and I who it was and what it was. Mm-hmm. But I went out and was telling a friend about it later, and it was like I couldn't even believe it myself. So I kind of dismissed the whole thing and said, "Oh, never mind." But it was definitely, I think, Thoreau letting us know he was around. So,
yeah, this is me. Yes, you
got
it.
And like I think it would be like a year before this had happened. I can't remember on the timing of this, but George he was the one that had said to me, "Move to Concord," because I was living in Cambridge, and it was like, "You need to move 12 miles west. What's out there?" And I was like, "Concord," because I knew, because it had been drawn to me, forever. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "Yeah, that," And then he described the house I would move into and the woman that owned the house and the whole, and it, turned out and it was all true. And so that was fascinating. And so this must have, I don't know if this was the same reading or it was around that time, but we had several episodes around getting me back to Concord. And then once I was there, some of what I write about in Honor in Concord is this sort of just this unrest that I was experiencing, because it was like I didn't know why I was there. I don't know, it just wasn't clear to me, and I wanted to be out of there. I wasn't happy with where I was living, yada, yada. So I was kind of caught up in some nonsense with that. And at one point, I had gone to a reading with him, and I was wanting him to say to me, "Don't leave Concord." And instead, he didn't say that in the reading, and I drove home, and I thought, well, that's fine. He didn't tell me to stay. I'm just going to move. And I picked up the phone an hour later. He had actually gotten into a reading with another person after me, and then my guides just would not leave him alone. And finally, he was told to call me and tell me, "Don't leave Concord." So he did. But anyhow, so there was just a lot of stuff going on about positioning me in Concord, showing me the connection to Thoreau, keeping me kind of on that track. And then eventually I joined the Thoreau Society, and through the Thoreau Society met Brad, and then, then things happened there that took place after Brad's passing. So,
mm-hmm. Well, this was just so calling you from the get-go.
Yes.
And I find that overwhelming, because I have never had a path so clearly defined until I was older.
Yeah.
And trust me, I was wandering loose in the desert for a very long time. And, trying to find what was supposed to happen, trying to find where I was meant to be. Nothing ever fit.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so I really feel happy for you that you were so aware of that your guides were talking to you.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely in touch with what the message was. Whether or not I defined it at that point as guides were telling me to do this, I just was like, this is what I need to do. I'm going mm-hmm. here. I'm being pulled here. So yeah, and I think I knew early on that was something that was different for me, that a lot of my friends didn't have. I also knew around the same time, which was around age 12, when I was saying, "Yo, Mom, I'm moving to Boston," I was also writing. Like I suddenly was just really writing all the time. And it's like, this is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a writer. And, she was, she was a good mom, but I can't say bad things about my mother on Mother's Day, but she was somebody who had a lot of psychic abilities herself, but was in denial about mm-hmm. them. And I think she had been taught to deny them. So then she tried to teach me to deny mine, so it became a very difficult thing for me. because I'd be going to her with, I saw this, I think this, oh, go play with your dolls. Oh, go, you're making it up. That was a famous, you're just making it up. So I spent a lot of my time thinking I was just making things up. And, I was crazy and, that kind of thing. So that's not terribly productive and kind of painful. But that's just some of the junk that you get. But I did know, and I was writing, and this was what I was meant to do. But I don't think it, really fully came together until 2006 with this book. Mm-hmm. With the experience that led to this book, and then it all made sense. It's like, oh, that's why it was pulled here. That's why I felt the way I did about Brad. Well, that's why, that's why Thoreau walked through me during that reading. That's why.
That's still so wicked cool.
Yeah.
That I have on investigations had that happen. And not necessarily people that I knew or recognized. It was very odd.
Yeah.
So, because I wasn't anticipating it. So I would have reacted with a little bit more, than you did.
Yeah.
But recognizing the energy and feeling that you knew who it was has to help.
Yeah.
I would think. But, I was curious. When you moved out to the house out at Walden, mm-hmm. and you began actually walking the paths that Thoreau had frequented, how did that mm-hmm. feel internally to you?
I think every time I was in Concord at all, it was just like being home. I mean, it just always felt wonderful to me. And when I first moved out here, I didn't live in Concord. I lived first in Arlington for a short time, and then I ended up in Cambridge for many years. And, I would always go out to Concord whenever I could. It was just like, I got to go get some fresh air. I got to get some of that energy. And I would come out, and this is where I needed to be. And then I returned to my life in Cambridge and Boston. And I was too young to live out in the country at that point. I wanted to be in the city.
Well, absolutely.
In the midst of all of whatever our spiritual paths might be, we also have our personalities to deal with. And, when you're young and you want to just go and have some fun and do things, and so I was, definitely in those years, I was way too young to come out to the sleepy town of Concord. But yet there, was a part of me that was always drawn here.
Yeah.
So I would, take those times whenever I had them and get myself out here just to, I'd go through the historic homes, I'd walk around town, and just sort of feel it and just try to, make sense of the feelings I had and wonder, what was going to come of this. So.
I think that was probably, I love your website in its entirety, which, by the way, if you are just joining in, is the Concord Writer, or Concord, if you're not Southern and draw everything out, theconcordwriter.com. And, the pictures that you have on there of the area are breathtaking.
Mm-hmm. I love my picture of Walden that I used on the front of the book as well.
Yes.
I remember when I took that. I think it was like in 2005, maybe.
Oh, wow.
But it was just the most beautiful picture.
It
you
is.
Have to catch it at the right moment.
It is all about timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a photographer, amateur now. I don't do it for business anymore, but I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I wish I had more time to be a photographer because I enjoy it when I'm doing it, but I don't know. But Concord is a lovely town. I mean, it's the historic town. It's where the shot heard around the world was heard out at the North Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Revolution began, and the home of authors of Emerson, Thoreau, the Alcotts.
Yes.
Emerson, Thoreau, Hawthorne? Yeah. So there's just like little magical stories here. And the house out by the North Bridge, which is the manse, is where the Hawthornes went when they first married. So it was like their honeymoon cottage. And so there's like wonderful magical stories of the Hawthornes living there. And of course, prior to that, 100 years prior, whatever, they were battling out in the backyard there, for, battling for the country. So it's really quite an amazing place that so much has taken place here. And then for the writers that gathered, the Transcendentalists at least, which Hawthorne was not, they had such an important message. So it's not just that they're writers and, all that. It's that they really had it. They got it. They got the truth, and they were working with the truth, and they were really so gifted in that way. So I think it makes it just so much more special.
Well, it does. And, when you said that about, there were battles going on in their backyard, I have not been there, but I was at Gettysburg for the very first time last July or August, for an event.
Tremendous. Haunted Gettysburg.
It was astounding.
Yes.
I didn't expect what I got when I got there. I thought that there would be, a lot of fear, a lot of, sorrow, a lot of different negative things. But what I got most was resolution.
That's good.
I have to do this. If I go forward, I might die. If I run, I will die.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to have to step forward and, with my prayers and do the best I can. And that was all over that town.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
That's a very interesting take on that. It's very spiritually active there.
Yes.
There's a lot of ghostly activity in that. And I like your take on that too, because that makes sense as well. When
you can't do anything else, you do the best you can with what your option is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where they were, I think.
Yeah.
We have a question in chat, and the Reddy said that in the description it says that you're a natural psychic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, versus what other type of psychic?
Well,
What makes you use that
phrase?
I
mean, I was born this way. I don't, I went to a lot of the New Age classes and that, and most I was interested in astrology, and I do past life and that. But a lot of people go and they take the psychic classes where they're going to teach you how to connect to spirit and how to be a psychic. That was something I didn't ever want to do. Because really, for the first 30 years or so, it was like, I don't want to be a psychic. I just want to be normal.
It just was kind of like in your face.
Yes. It was really like, can I just, stop being this now and just have a normal life? And then, you just imagine my spirit posse just chuckling at that, and I'm here like, no, Cathryn, the personality really just wants to be normal. Ha ha ha, yeah, next. So it's like, if you know what I mean, it's like, okay, well, now that I've had that fit, okay, I'll get back to being who I am. So, I really didn't want to get practiced at this. That to me is the distinction. It's like I have not been trained to be a psychic. I don't take money to be a psychic.
You didn't seek it.
It's a natural part of who I am, is just to have this opening and this ability to speak to spirit.
Well, she has expanded on this question a little bit. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask that, because we have a few more minutes until break. But first, she would like to know what the difference is between you and a medium.
Well, a medium to me implies that somebody's going to take a message to pass on to a particular person, I guess. So, in a sense, I'm a medium. I'm connecting to spirit, and sometimes I'll pass on a message if they insist. But again, this is me. Do I see?
Do you see spirits?
I sometimes see spirits. I saw Brad. That was what started the whole thing when I actually saw an image of him. I do sometimes see them. It's more so I sense them and I hear them. Mm-hmm. Is more than actually seeing.
Right.
It's a weird seeing anyway. But I always wonder if like somebody was standing next to me when I was seeing that spirit, if they would see them too, you know. And I think the answer to that is no, because I think there's some kind of a focus, like that is like I don't know what it is, but I know that when I saw Brad that day, it was like I was just a little bit, you know, like a little bit of a meditative state, just a little bit switched, you know, and then I shook out of it and didn't see him anymore. You know, so anyhow, I guess the difference, I don't act professionally as a medium. I don't have clients where I do mediumship. That's not something I'm comfortable doing. So I don't know if there's a difference in terms of what they're doing other than the intent of it, you know, versus what I'm doing. Mine's more like just, you know, connecting and talking and getting information and then putting it into my books maybe, or but I don't professionally you know, operate as a professional medium, if that makes sense.
But when you said that she has one more part, I'm sorry, but actually I'm not sorry, it's a great question. But when you were talking about that your abilities are natural, these were not something that you went out and paid somebody to help you gain or learn to use or anything of that nature. But she would like to know if you believe in the places that tell you they will sell you a course to learn to do this. Do you think it is something that's trainable?
I think, of course. I mean, I think that we have to be careful with whatever place is telling you whatever they're telling you. You have to just judge, again, by your own instincts. Go inside and judge whether or not you're going to trust that individual. But aside from that, yes, of course, there's value in doing that. I think that's a great way to open yourself up more to the spiritual side of things anyway. And so, of course, you know, why not do that if that's something you're interested in doing? You know, I'm just saying for me personally, this was something I was trying to shake off, not something I was trying to get better at.
Oh, please. I grew up in the South where, you know, my grandmother knew what was going on, but nobody else ever acknowledges things like that. You know, we'll put our crazy on the front porch with a glass of iced tea and talk to people that go by, but we don't talk about the paranormal. Right? So, because I guess Bible Belt and things of that nature, it's just taboo. And a lot of, not so much as it was. Or maybe I just don't care as much as I did because I'm old. But,
that may be.
But it is something that here was very difficult to discuss. And I was, you know, I also was like, oh, no. But we don't talk about that.
Times have changed enormously in the past, 25 years or so, 25 years. I mean, just or more, just since I moved out here. I mean, when I was first out here and I was going to some of these things and talking about that, this was pre-Coast to Coast AM, it was pre-Art Bell. This, we couldn't just talk about this stuff openly. People would just think you were flat out nuts. And, so that's why I said earlier, I'm a huge fan of Coast to Coast, in part because it was like, finally, people are talking my language, They're talking about things that I've experienced that I know to be true. And, it's finally a place where you can talk about them. And then, on top of that, to have like the James Van Praagh and John Edward and these people coming on the television showing what they're able to do. And it's just changed the whole dynamic and attitude of so many people.
And with that, we have to go to our second break, believe it or not. This time is flying. But we will be right back. And thank you all for being with us. And we will be looking forward to continuing this.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad you're here. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, with Cathryn McIntyre as my guest tonight, and we have been having such a great discussion with questions from chat. If you have questions, please do join us in the chat room. You can find us at www.wbhm-db.com to chat. And if you're listening on your Spreaker app, we have chat there too. Both of them are free and both of them are active, so just come on in. And Cathryn, I had to cut you off and I'm so sorry for that.
That's okay.
But we had been talking about the differences in culture between then and now.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, it's such a different world now than it was. And, and so many more people that are interested in the paranormal are able to come out and say, hey, I'm interested in the paranormal.
Right.
I'm telling 25 years ago, we couldn't do that. And, I was writing things, sending them to agents 25 years ago and being told, we don't publish things like this. We don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, wait a minute, And now there's just a huge market in paranormal stuff. So, times change, but, luckily it gives people like me a chance to just say, hey, okay, this is real. This is what I've done. These are the things I've experienced. And, I'll talk about them. I'm not afraid to talk about this stuff anymore.
Well, frankly, you weren't before either. You were just shut down.
I was just shut down a little bit, but I was also a little afraid to talk about it because, I want everybody to think I'm nuts. But now I sort of, like you said, you're older and you don't care who thinks you're nuts anymore. I'm a bit like that.
I will just let that flag shine, right? Fly that
you reach
flag.
A certain age and it's like, but no, it's more so that I think part of my mission is just to be a little more comfortable about it and hopefully bridge a gap that's out there that, I don't call myself a scholar of Thoreau by any means, but because it's sort of like to me to even think in those terms, but
right.
I do know a great deal about him, and I feel like I guess sometimes that we get if the paranormal community, the people who have these experiences talk about these things, get pushed into the corner like we're not intellectually capable, we're somehow less than the mainstream, and I'm just so happy to see so much of the mainstream now opening up to our stories and our truths and allowing us to talk about them and realizing that this stuff is true, and it's time we really took a closer look and that science got involved as much as they can and the truth came out about you name it, UFOs and all these things, because they're all real. It's all true.
It is all true. And something that I am finding fascinating is the rush of science to get involved in the spiritual side and explain everything away.
Yeah.
So, I'm just kind of like,
done.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am actually a student of parapsychology who has natural gifts as well. And I know that when I was 3, I wasn't making stuff up and I wasn't having something of, I wasn't creating something at 3. So just an interesting thing. But I'm learning. And I'm learning how these sciences can interact and can explain some of the things that are happening.
Yeah.
And there are always going to be people who are gifted.
Yeah.
But there are also going to be phenomena that you can't find a realistic and truthful explanation for as well. Yeah. Do you mind another question if it's, she said if it's not too personal. But,
that's fine.
Excuse me.
I'll let you know if it's too personal.
Okay. But she said, what are your religious or spiritual beliefs, and have they changed or evolved as you've gotten older and or embraced your abilities more? And she asks because she's having an experience with that.
Mm-hmm. It's not too personal. I was raised in Episcopalian church. My mother kind of just took us to church until we were confirmed into the, whatever it is, you get baptized, then you get confirmed. After that, it was like, well, if you want to go, you can go. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And of course, I didn't want to. So that was about the end of my religious upbringing. So after that, it was just sort of feeling my way through the world. So I don't really have a religious foundation other than that. I guess that's the extent of it. My beliefs are that we live on, and I do believe in the power of, I guess I want to say like the Christ energy, or the a lot of the how do I want to put this? I guess I want to say I believe I believe there was a Jesus. I don't know if I believe in everything the Bible says about what he represented or what he was. Maybe it's all true. I don't know the answer personally, but I do find that when I encounter negativity in the spiritual realms, that all I got to do is mention Jesus, and man, they clear away.
I found that to be true.
I wear a cross, and I do believe very strongly in him and in the power of Jesus as a spiritual guide and source of the divine. And so I call upon him in that way, and it works. It's amazing how it works. So I don't know if that was an answer to that question or not. That's about as good as I got.
I think it was a very good answer, because I'm a Christ follower, and I do happen to think that he is who he says he is, said he is, and that he did what he said he did. Yeah. I don't know, if there are people that mock it, and it's like, the first zombie and all that other stuff, and I don't mind other people's beliefs, because that doesn't really affect me. Mm-hmm. But I have been Presbyterian, and when my children were young, I was in a Southern Baptist church for their kid activities. Mm-hmm. And Reddy said, yes, it was a great answer. Thank you. Okay. And, I just kind of learned that you have to make your own decisions and choices, and groupthink is never a good thing.
Right.
So my relationship and my faith is very personal. I don't really invite other people in to critique it or have that much of an opinion about it, but I don't mind sharing it if someone asks. Kind of like you. Yeah. And it's good. I mean, it works for me.
Well, it's, that's the important part. I mean, that it worked for you and that the connection is there. I mean, to answer the part about how did this experience change me, I think it just intensified and kind of, solidified the connection to spirit and the belief in the divine, in God, in the divine, and in Jesus as part of that. And I mean, Jesus is my figure from my Christian background and coming from that. But I believe in the power of other spiritual leaders as well.
I believe in the spirit of positivity, and I find that exuded through Buddha as well. Mm-hmm. I know Tibetan monks who are astounding. They also have astounding gifts. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you have to respect all religions, I think. I don't think you can just go out and get in someone's face, which I had a serious issue with door-to-door ministries and that type of thing. I would not do that. Mm-hmm. But because you just share. The best way I know how to do anything is what one of my old Sunday school teachers used to say is love them till they ask you why. And that seems to be a great way to live. Mm-hmm. So that's what I try to do. I'm not always great at it. Not even close. But I give it my best shot, right?
Yep, that's right. That's all you can do.
And so, what does your mom think? If she's still living now, or
No, she has crossed over.
what did she think before she left of what you're doing and your experiences?
It was interesting because after my father died, like she knew I was doing this kind of stuff, and or that not the channeling, but she knew I was interested in this spiritual things, and I was studying astrology and going to different things. And I would go to mediums, and I would come back and I would tell her, things. So after my father died in 2003, and she passed then in 2005. And in that interim couple of years when it was just her, she became more and more receptive and open to the kind of things that I was talking about and wanted to tell her. And I would go to a medium and I'd come back and say, okay, Mom, this, that, or the other, and can you confirm this? And it would be like, yeah, she could confirm that stuff. So it was really interesting because one time with George, after my father had died, he said, he's coming through and he's talking about a picture with you, and George kept saying the name Lee. And I was like, I don't know who he's talking about. I don't know anybody named Lee. And it turns out it was a neighbor kid that was, his name was actually Leaf. I guess they were from, I don't know, Scandinavia or something. And there was a picture. We were little kids together, so we were like 1 or 2 years old, the two of us sitting on a little wagon together. And I had no idea about this, but my dad carried that picture in his wallet forever. And so he came through the reading talking about the picture of me with the little boy named Leaf. And when I said to my mom that, George is talking about me and a kid named Lee, and she was like, that's Leaf. I have the picture, So she was able to confirm that, and it was wonderful. And so little things like that got her talking to me more about spirit. And when she crossed over, one of the first things she came through to say was to say thank you, that, I had helped her, kind of prepare her to not be so afraid, and, that she'd be okay. And she was. So
that's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's more accepting, and the messages from her were also to the effect of, she wished she could have been more open and to it so that we could have bonded more on this level, since we both had these abilities. But she was just so, kind of had been taught to just deny it to such a degree she couldn't even, she couldn't be that forthcoming with it. But I also think it just wasn't our karma. She had to be, who she was to me for whatever reason. That was sort of her role to play, so she had to be that. And so, I just sort of accepted it as that. So she's okay with things now. So,
that's funny that she said that just, that was her karma, that she had to cope that way.
Yeah.
Because karma is strong and powerful, and you will live through it.
Yeah.
So
I try to remember that as much as you learn, and as much as we connect with, divine hour and wisdom and all of that, we're still here. We're still sort of in this play, and we still have our personalities and our relationship agendas and things that we're working through, and we're still going to go through a lot of that, even though we're
still those people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not always our spiritual best.
No. I just attribute it to personality. I'm like, okay,
sure.
Well, my personality is telling me this today. So.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish I could rein that thing in, too.
Exactly.
But we are at the top of the hour. This has gone by so fast. We will be back. This is the news break, guys. So this is a great time to stretch your legs, fill your tea or coffee mugs, and come on back and enjoy some more of this conversation with Cathryn McIntyre. Thank you so much for being here, and we will return.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Nevada State Museums. The Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City is unveiling a new exhibit this spring in celebration of the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad. Visit Nevada150railroad.com for more.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Cleanup continues in the Houston Ship Channel after a collision between vessels yesterday sent thousands of gallons of a toxic gasoline additive into the water. So far, officials say that additive isn't a major health concern. But as Houston Public Media's Davis Land reports, officials are still suspending oyster harvesting downstream until further notice.
The Coast Guard and National Transportation Safety Board still aren't sure what caused a tanker to crash into a tugboat pushing 2 barges last Friday. One barge capsized, and cleanup crews will have to cut through the steel bottom of the ship to pump out the remaining product. Officials say so far 2 seagulls, 1 raccoon, and some fish are believed to have died due to the spill. Residents in the area have complained of a gasoline odor. At a press conference, Jim Guidry of the barge company says 24-hour air quality monitoring is ongoing.
We've not seen any levels that cause us concern for people's health.
Fishermen are also being encouraged not to eat fish caught in certain parts of the Galveston Bay. For NPR News, I'm Davis Land.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has apparently selected a spot for a new settlement in the occupied Golan Heights that he will name for President Trump. The decision is to honor Trump's recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the territory. Tanya Kramer has more.
A site for the new settlement has been selected, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday. It will have to be approved by the new government Netanyahu is currently trying to form. While Netanyahu gave no further details, Israeli media reports suggested that the site is located in the northwestern part of the Golan Heights. He may lay the cornerstone as early as June. Israel captured the territory from Syria in the 1967 war. Most of the international community considers the Golan Heights as occupied territory. In March, President Trump recognized Israeli control over the Golan Heights. The decision drew international criticism. For NPR News, I'm Tanya Kramer in Jerusalem.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is heading to Russia to meet Tuesday with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the Black Sea resort of Sochi. It'll be the highest-level face-to-face talks since the release of the Special Counsel's report on Russian election interference. Voters are casting their ballots today in northern India. NPR's Lauren Freyer reports it's the second-to-last round of voting in the general election, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a second term.
Modi was elected 5 years ago on a promise of prosperity. India's economy is growing fast, but job creation has not kept pace, and unemployment is at a 4-decade high. Opposition parties accuse Modi of not doing enough to help farmers. Low crop prices have led many to take their own lives.
NPR's Lauren Freyer reporting from Mumbai. You're listening to NPR News from Washington. The governor of Mississippi has declared a state of emergency, joining Louisiana as a severe storm system with high winds and heavy rain led to flooding. In New Orleans, flash flooding has closed several roadways and left homes underwater. Power is out also for many residents. More than 5 inches of rain fell on that city. Meanwhile, the National Weather Service confirms a tornado touched down in Suffolk, Virginia, with no reports of injuries so far. Forecasters say locally heavy rainfall will continue over the southeast and the mid-Atlantic into tomorrow. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is kicking off a major push to combat climate change. NPR's Shannon Van Zandt reports Guterres is in New Zealand as part of a trip to the South Pacific to highlight the dangers of not addressing the issue.
Guterres says the world is not on track to meeting the 2015 Paris Climate Accord objectives. Under the agreement, countries vowed to try to limit a rise in global temperatures to 1.5%. President Trump says he is withdrawing the U.S. from the deal. Guterres spoke to the media in Auckland alongside New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern.
We are facing a climate emergency. Climate change is running faster than what we are. The last 4 years have been the hottest registered.
Guterres also commended Ardern for introducing a bill which aims to make New Zealand mostly carbon neutral by 2050. Climate change threatens many low-lying islands in the Pacific Ocean with the risk of rising sea levels. Shannon Van Zandt, NPR News.
And I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I am telling you, if you missed our first hour, I just don't even know what to say. You'll be so excited to know that you can catch our archive here on Spreaker, here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You can find us at iHeart, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, and Stitcher. So, never fear. You'll be able to hear this episode in its entirety, but later. Not right now. Right now, we are fixing to go back live. And if you want to join our chat, we have two available for you. They are both free. One is the one that is in your Spreaker app if you're listening mobile. You'll find it right there under WBHM Digital or DB and under Fate Mag Radio. If you are listening through fatemag.com or WBHM-DB.com, you will find a listen live link and you will find a chat link. And you can come right in there and you can join us. And you can be asking questions just like Rhodey has been and Cathryn is answering. So this is the time and this is your chance to get it live from Cathryn's mouth. Cathryn, welcome back. Are you having fun?
I am, definitely. Thank you.
I am too. This is so neat. Before we move on, and we were talking about moving into some of your different types of experiences, Rennie wants to know what has been your most memorable paranormal experience or experiences.
Ooh. Good question.
She's awesome, right? She is on it tonight.
There have been so many. I mean, the most awesome one, of course, is the channeling Thoreau and the connecting with Brad the way I have. To me, that's the most amazing and incredible, and it was magic. It was just amazing. But, I mean, otherwise, I mean, they're just, I mean, so many things that, you know, I don't even know where to begin. You know, I
is there something that just stands out as it was like a, oh my gosh, moment?
Well, the moment with Brad. I mean, when I first, you know, that, I mean,
but I read that, but everybody else didn't.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be.
You know, we were talking about my mom before, and really the channeling began on the 1 year, or not the channeling, but when I saw Brad after he had died, it was the 1 year anniversary of my mother's death. So I was, you know, I write about this in the book. I was setting out a candle to, you know, sort of just like mark the anniversary, and I was trying to connect to her, as I had done a few times during that year since she had passed. And instead, I found myself connecting to him. And in that moment, you know, I kind of turned and I saw that image of him in my dining room. Now, mind you, as far as I knew, he was alive. So why was I seeing him? You know, I had no idea he had died. And until that moment, you know, and my reaction to it was just, you know, I must be making this up. But, you know, basically for a couple of seconds or minutes, however long it was, we communicated, and we were communicating about something that had happened the last time I saw him. Like, we didn't really end on a very favorable note. So we were kind of apologizing to each other. And then I saw him do this motion with his hands, which I was joking later looked like some kind of a namaste greeting, you know, because I saw him put his hands together kind of above his head and draw them down. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know, thinking, what are you doing? And had no idea what that was. And then, of course, like I said before, I kind of snapped out of that focus where I could see him. And then at that point I said to myself, you know, why am I seeing Brad this way? Why am I, you know, talking to him the way I talk to Mom and Dad? He's not dead, you know. And then I went off to work, and later I was on the computer at work, and I was looking up an obituary for the neighbor lady in the building where I lived had passed away. I had just learned about that. I'm telling you, death is all around me. And so I was there looking for her obit, and I came upon an obit for Brad. And that's when I knew, you know, it was real. So my answer to the question is that was the most amazing paranormal moment for me, I guess, is when I saw my friend that I didn't know was dead standing before me, you know, when he came to me in that moment. And so that was the most important one. And that was the beginning of that was the beginning of what became the book, because a couple days later I actually called to make an appointment with George. I didn't write this in the book because I frankly thought it was just too much over the top, but I thought I was going to make an appointment with George when I called to talk to him about Brad. And instead I was told that George had died. And George had died 3 months before, the same way Brad did, which was from a sudden heart attack. And so I saw Barbara, who was his partner in the business, and also, I say in the book, in life. And that was my first reading with Reverend Barbara. And it was at that reading, and this was in Salem, where I'd been going for years to these readings, and she said to me, she began to describe Thoreau. She didn't know she was describing him. She was just describing this man, and short with a large nose, and he had the dark hair, and it was like dark reddish hair, however she described it. And then in the doing of the communication with Brad, before Thoreau stepped in, she did the exact same motion with her hands as I had seen him do, and she said, "He's showing you that he's going to bring his energy down to you." That was the symbol, it was like drawing his energy down to me, and that he would continue to work with me, and that not only would he do that, but that Thoreau would be doing that as well. And that was when I first learned that this was coming. And that was in January of 2006, and I was told that in the fall that Thoreau would begin to communicate with me as well. And it was interesting because she didn't know anything about me or about Brad at that point, and she drew a little computer monitor, and she said, "I can just see those words flying across that computer." And she, and it was really funny because I was working as a word processor, and Brad was very computer savvy, and she had no idea about that, and yet she had totally picked up on how it was going to happen, and the timing, because in the fall, she also told me there would be sheets of paper coming down in dreams, just, landing in front of you in dreams. And they, when you wake up, have a piece of paper there because you're going to have to write everything down. And, all this stuff happened that she described. So it was quite amazing. So in the fall, it was when he began to regularly speak through. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting messages, and all of it is wow, and that's so cool, and how amazing. And, it is. It literally is astounding.
I think, there are a couple words that I use repeatedly in the book. One of them was magic. It was just magic, the whole thing. And the other is joy. And it was. And, I could get really emotional about the whole experience because looking back on it, I think, those are the happiest times of my life, those couple of years when I was regularly in touch with Brad and with Henry in the channeling sessions that we would do. And I like to tell people, too, this isn't channeling. Like, in my old-fashioned idea of what channeling was, it was like my personality would leave and he'd jump in and take over my body or something. No. This was more like automatic writing or just conversation sometimes. And it was just magic. It was wonderful. And I say in the book as well, during that time, it was like I was surrounded with so much love. It was like the energy of love all around. It was so profound, so wonderful. So. I'm getting choked up remembering, but it really, truly was. And,
well, isn't it better to have something that moves you like that, that's such a positive and love-filled thing, other than, coming from the other side with regret and loss and being overwhelmed and choked up by that. Love triumphs all.
Oh, no, love does triumph all. And it was, and the message is so wonderful as well. And I guess that's what I want to tell people about this book is that, this isn't like some academic piece on Thoreau. This is a story of what I'm telling you right now is how it happened. And within the story of how it happened are the words that I received from him. And he's a very joyful, playful spirit. He's a lot of fun. And and had a lot of important things to say. And in general, it's a spiritual message, and he wants that. I guess in a sense, I'm going to say we, all of us, want to bring people back to Thoreau and to reconsider his work again and to look at it. I tell people that, those of us who are on a spiritual path, who are the New Agers, the people who are doing that, are much more equipped to read and understand Thoreau's work than many of the academics that I've witnessed. I'm bad, but I really feel that way. So the book just sort of brings us back to some of the fundamental spiritual principles in his work that often get overlooked, and that's part of it. And then also just in general, just bring people back to the books and to the message.
Well, a lot of people don't realize, if they're just people that see the quote memes on Facebook, or they're like, well, he had some great ideas. Well, there's so much more to him. Yes, those are fantastic ideas, and they are things you should apply to life. And yes, he was brilliant at capturing a moment in a sentence.
Yeah.
But there is so much more to his work and so much more to his motivation. Mm-hmm. And I think that being able to do as you have and bring people back to that is really huge. It's such a gift.
I feel like, that it was a gift to me to have this experience and to be able to be a part of it. So I feel very blessed that way. And I do feel, as I sat here tonight before the show, just kind of reviewing the book a little bit, because it's strange. Some parts of it, I have to remind myself that I don't know how many times I must have read this or edited it, but it's like, oh gosh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember he said that. It's just funny because it didn't come from me originally, so it feels like, it feels a little different. Anyhow, but I'm really proud of the book when I look at it and I start to read through it. And I think, as I was putting it together, I thought, I just want this to be beautiful, and just want it to be a beautiful book that people feel good when they read it. And I think I've achieved that. That was sort of my part of it, is just sort of, I want this to be beautiful and inspiring and something that is life affirming.
Well, I think you did that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Oh, we're almost at our next break. But I know that I had to refresh myself too, because I gobbled it. And going back and rereading, as you skim through, you find things that you didn't know were there, that you missed because you were just going through it. But what do you think is the most important message that you received, that you channeled and put in this book from him? What do you think was his priority?
Well, I think that the most important message is, and it's the fundamental principle of transcendentalism, really, is that looking within thing, because we really are spiritual beings, and it's to really remind us of that if you're looking for the truth in the world, you don't look to the talking heads to tell you the truth. You don't look to
thank
here,
goodness.
there, and everywhere. You need to look within. You don't look to another person or outside, and you don't look to another individual to tell you what God says. You go directly to God. That's part of that as well.
Because He talks to you.
Yes.
Your Creator talks to you. If you will listen. The most important verse in my book, and I have it many things, is be still and listen.
And listen, yes. And be still from that place within. That's that's part of meditation, and that where you try to reach that space within. That's where you get that knowledge and that connection.
Well, I want to revisit this when we come back from our break, if you don't mind, because I do think that's so important, and I felt like that was the primary principle also. So we will be right back and see you then. Thanks for listening, and be sure you come back too.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome! What?
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, with my guest, Cathryn McIntyre. And Cathryn, we were talking before the break about what you felt was Thoreau's primary goal in reaching out to you and giving you this information. And if you would like to share from your book for this, I would love that.
Okay. I was just going to say about the original title of this book was Thoreau's Wise Silence. You mentioned the silence. Mm-hmm. And I would have loved to stick with that, but I was encouraged to change it to a, I don't know what, more appealing, more marketable title, whatever. So I made the change and I called it the Thoreau Whisper. But the title, Thoreau's Wise Silence, was inspired by this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. So let me read this. We live in succession, in division, in parts, in particles. Meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. So my answer to what was the message of Thoreau, the most important message is that wise silence, is that we must reach that wise silence within us. You know, for there is our connection to God and to who we are. Spirit, divine, God, the spark, the one, the source, all of that. So,
I love that. And I hope that message resonates with everyone who reads your book.
I hope so.
Well, you know, without it, you can be swallowed up by the noise. I mean,
well, it's like the magic wand. It's how do you get through the view? That's how you use your own device, and your own device is within you.
Yes, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. I love that statement. Thank you. And it's really funny because if people stop and analyze, they say that religions are different, faiths are different. They are two different things. But every faith that I know leads you to that silence. There's always be still. And it doesn't really matter what religion you're practicing. That is part of it.
No.
So I love that. I really do.
Great.
We wanted to, I don't know if you want to or not, but I want to. But we were talking about your different experiences through life. And you've had several. You have, through your channeling, through your abilities, through other things, but something happened in your life that you were not in control of. And I wanted to know if you were comfortable speaking about your UFO experience.
Sure.
Well, how long ago was it?
This was something that I had the classic experience of abduction when I was a kid. And I would say as early as like 6 and maybe even earlier, because I have some memories of seeing little beings around. I almost want to say I was still in a crib when I was seeing some of these things that I remember. And it seems like I couldn't remember that, but we were not a very rich family, and I was the youngest of 4 siblings. So I think I probably stayed in that crib longer than most kids would have, just because it was a bed I could sleep in.
I understand that.
I'm thinking I was probably a little bit older in that crib. But anyways, I do have those memories. But there was a very distinct experience that was classically alien abduction when I was probably, when I was 6 to 7, something like that, which involved seeing the grays and having the experience. When they touch you, they have vibration to their hands. There's a vibration. And I remember feeling the vibration and calling to my mother and having her come in the room. And when she would come into the room, I would psychically see these beings scatter. Like one went down the hall into the dining room, one went into the closet, one went in another, and I would say, like, I'm like trying to tell my mother, there were these little things here, and they went, and she's just like, go to sleep, you're making it up. And, off she'd go back to bed. And then it came about again, and it was such a profound memory for me, and not a very pleasant one. I had that experience. I'd had a few others, and then I kind of just pushed it out of my mind and went on with my life. And I had another kind of an abduction scenario take place when I was in college in Upper Michigan, which would have been around 1978 maybe. And after that, things just kind of, I'd had a lot of weird things would happen. I wouldn't necessarily associate it with aliens. I don't even know if in 78 I was thinking that was an alien thing, but there was something going on. But long story short, so I'm in my 30s at a certain point, and I decide it's kind of like it was. I think I'd started to listen to Coast to Coast by then, or to Art Bell's show, and it got me interested to think about the UFO thing again. And my father, I should say, was always very into this topic, and for Father's Day, we'd go get him books on the UFOs, and, he'd read them and loved them and all that. So he was always kind of open to that. And I remember standing with him in the driveway one day, and we were watching a light in the sky that shouldn't have been there. And he was very fascinated with it. He had a UFO experience that he remembered from like his 20s where he saw one. Not that he remembered being abducted, but he remembered seeing one. Mm-hmm. And so he had that interest. So it was talked about, but anyhow, so in my 30s, I started to investigate. I decided to go to the MUFON group that was meeting nearby in Cambridge at that time. And through them, I began to realize that I had had this experience and that what I had was like a classic abduction experience. And that got me into it and interested. And so for a couple of years there, I was involved with a group of fellow experiencers in the Boston area. This was not the group that worked with John Mack. I met up with them sort of later, but I was with this group initially with another investigator. And it was fascinating because I'd have moments with them that would give me confirmation, because really most of the time, my life at that point at least, I was always telling myself I was crazy. So it was like, oh yeah, okay, I've had that experience, but I'm crazy, so that can't be real. Even though the people that I'm with are telling me, oh no, that's real, we had that too, and I'm like, yeah, but we're all making it up, So one,
that's terrible.
I know, but this is what it was like. So I would go to these meetings. Well, we'd have them, I don't know, once every month or once every 6 weeks or something. We'd all meet at somebody's house on a Sunday. And one weekend, I think it was like the weekend before the meeting was going to take place, it was a Sunday afternoon. All of a sudden the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and there's this like, these tones going off in the phone. And I'm like, okay, that was weird. It was just like phone noise and weird beeps and stuff. And I hung up the phone. And I thought, yeah, it was really weird. And then didn't think about it. I get to the meeting the next week, and one of the women said, okay, so how many here got that call last weekend at 4:30, whatever it was? How many people got that same call? It was a tune-up, she said. It was a tune-up to our implants. That's the way she termed it. Did you all get the tune-up? And I'm there like, oh, my God. Yeah, because I had gotten the tune-up.
How many people got that?
Oh, 5 or 6, 7 maybe of the group had gotten the phone call. Same thing.
Wow.
I know. So things like that would happen, and I'd go, okay, well, so this is real. This is something real. And that what I had experienced was real. And so.
That's unusual.
Yeah. It was wild. And I used to go and I would have hypnosis with the guy that was kind of the leader of this group, and he would do hypnosis and try to get us to remember more things. And really, I did remember more stuff, but I found like I didn't trust the things that came up through hypnosis as much as I just trusted my regular sort of natural memories of it. And so I didn't like the hypnosis very much, and I didn't do it for very long because I didn't really trust it. But at the same time, while we were doing that, I would look over at him, and behind him I would see this image of a alien, like a classic, the round head and the big eyes, and behind him. And I'm thinking, no, I'm crazy. I'm not really seeing an image of it, So then again at the group, somebody says, so how many people have seen that UFO guy that sits behind, him at the sessions? Have you seen him that hangs out in Bill's basement? Whatever. Joe's basement. It's Joe. And I was like, oh my God, other people are seeing that alien over behind him too. So these are the kind of things that confirmed for me that, okay, this is a real experience. I really did have this. What does it mean? I'm not sure. But I know it's real. And so I dealt with it for a couple of years. Then I kind of went away and lived my life and did other things for a while and didn't think about it. And then when the channeling began, so now we're going ahead
right, that's fine.
10, 15 years, the channeling begins, and I'm caught up in this. And it was actually in the months before it actually began, but I knew, things were happening, and I was, whatever, things were going on. And I met, through the Thoreau Society, a friend of Brad's And then she introduced me to her friend, and her friend happened to be somebody who was also an experiencer who had contact with John Mack's group in Cambridge. And that brought me into what, he had passed away, John Mack, and then there were, his group there kind of stayed together for a while. So I got pulled into their group, which was great. And I felt very honored and privileged to have been invited to be a part of that. I didn't stay very long, but while I was in it, we had a meeting at my house, and it was the house in Bedford where I was doing the channeling. So at that point, I think I write about this in the book too. I can't remember if this was 2007 or 2008, but at one point we had a meeting there. And I had said to Thoreau and to Brad the day before, it was like, well, I actually didn't invite Brad because he was around so much. I just figured he'd be there. But I said to Henry, if you want to come to the meeting tomorrow, you ought to show up. And of course, I'm thinking, this is stupid. He's not going to show up. And then, so then they all come to my house, and, we're all sitting in this room that had become very sacred space to me, and I felt a little like, I don't want all these people here. But, we were all crowded in. And I swear I don't even know how I got enough chairs in there, because I don't, it's just me. I don't know if I have chairs in the house to seat all these people, but somehow there were like 10 of us, whatever. So we're all in the little room where I do the channeling. And suddenly one of the group members says to me, what does Thoreau look like? And I'm like, well, I point to his picture over on the bookshelf, and then somebody hands the picture to her, and she looks at it, and she goes, he's standing right there.
Oh.
So it was a great moment, and I go, oh, no wonder I can't keep my eyes off that spot. Yeah, he was standing right there. So that was a lot of fun. So he came to the meeting. And then, of course, they all wanted me to channel him right there on the spot. So that was fun.
That is fun.
Yeah.
And wild.
Yeah, it was. But you asked. But that was a lot of fun.
Well, it sounds like it was. A little freaky, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Well, did you do any past life regression through that period of your life with outside of the hypnosis that you were undergoing? Or was that part of that?
No, I have done different classes in that before. I have some impressions of past lives. And I've had, I've had people indicate things. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I'm a true believer in past lives, so don't get me wrong. And I'm, sure I've lived many times, and I'm sure I had a connection with Thoreau in one of those lives. So it's hard to know, but
interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is, because I've had people tell me that I was Martha Hunt, who, if you know anything about Concord history, if anyone does, she was a school teacher who drowned herself in the river one morning, because essentially I write about her in honor of Concord. She's actually one of my characters, and because she just was so, so she had such a different point of view and was just so uncomfortable with the times, where she was expected to marry and have children, and this is what she was going to do, and she couldn't just go be an intellectual, which is what she wanted to do, and I think she just chose to, she wasn't going to stick with it. If that were her only choices were that, then she didn't want anything to do with it. So she ended up drowning herself one day, and Hawthorne actually was one of the men in the boat that went out to retrieve the body, and he ended up writing about her, and in his fictional stories, in the Blythedale Romance, he writes about that scene, taking the woman out of the water. But anyhow, I've been told that I was her. Now, I don't know if I really believe that, but I've been told that, so it's fun.
That's unusual. But I guess we all had to be someone.
Yes. And it's interesting because it ties into Concord. It makes sense in some ways. So
yeah, but you're so positive as a rule.
Yeah.
Based on what I've seen and read and heard and learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were her, then you learned a life lesson.
I guess so. I mean, I have a fear of water. Say that.
Is
I don't
it
like
extreme?
to be out on the water or in the water. So, I don't know. Anyway, next.
Prevent it happening again.
Yeah. No,
That
it won't.
is, but that would be logical, I guess. I don't mean to be flip, but it's just interesting.
Yeah. Well, it places me in Concord, so.
It does.
Yeah.
I have never had a past life regression done. I don't think I want to know. Sometimes I think I do.
Well,
but
that's the thing. I mean, sometimes I'm interested and sometimes I'm not. So.
Yeah, I'm not more than I am, so I figure if that balance shifts, then I'll look into it.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you sharing that because I was curious as to what or how extreme you had felt that to be. Was it something that frightened you? The abduction experience?
The UFO thing?
Yeah. I mean, when you got older, obviously as a child it did because...
Well, at the time in my 30s when I was investigating this, I used to tell people it was like there was like this crack in my psyche. It was just dramatic. I mean, it really was. To go from, I knew I had that experience to that was real. I mean, that's really a change in your psychology. You go like, you get different. So that was a real turning point for me in my life of really confronting, what was real and what wasn't, and all the things that have been so weird that I kept dismissing as dreams or, whatever. It was like, oh, wait a minute. No, if that really happened, then that changes everything. And, that, I mean, that right there, that sentence is kind of the theme of my purpose in the Thoreau Whisper, and my message in that is that in the midst of them going, oh yeah, we want to get this book out, we want to draw people back to Thoreau's message, his spiritual message, and how important that is, and I'm going, yeah, okay, that's great, and yeah, we need to say that, but by the way, isn't this amazing? We all live on, and to me, that changes everything.
Well,
so
yeah.
That's what that was my message in the book, is I want to say, well, wait a minute, if Thoreau's still there and Brad's still there, and all these people, that means everybody is still there. So, at a certain point, I put on the website, that quote that ends with the line, all who ever were, still are, and always will be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fact. And when you really get that, you really grok that at a deep level, that changes the world. That changes everything.
It does change everything.
People, changes how you think about your life, how you treat each other, how, it just really changes everything. And, that's how important this experience was for me in terms of the channeling and this book that's come from it, really both books. But also in terms of the UFO experience, that was another pivotal turning point in my life of realization that there's so much more than just the physical body and this life we lead and the day-to-day. There's so much more going on than that.
Absolutely. And this sounds like a good time for a break. We will be right back with our final segment, and we will give out all of Cathryn's information so that you'll know how to find her, because I know you're going to want to. So just bear with us. We'll be right back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. You're listening to Fate Mag Radio, the voice of Fate Magazine. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I am joined by Cathryn McIntyre. We are into our final segment, and Cathryn, before we go any further, I would like it if you could just let people know how to get in touch with you, because I know people are going to be wanting this book. I know that they're going to have questions for you. Where would they find you?
Okay, they can go to my website, which is theconcordwriter.com. It's a TheConcordWriter.com. My email address is cmc@theconcordwriter.com. And the book is available everywhere on the internet, Amazon, Powell's, Barnes & Noble, I think pretty much all the places, Kobo, where all the people go for internet books. You can find it there. You can get signed copies directly from the shop at Walden Pond. They do have an online bookstore, so you can order it and have it shipped there, and that would be a signed copy. And I'm on Twitter. I would be happy to welcome many more followers on Twitter. And it's at Cathryn McIntyre. It's CathrynMcIntyre. And also on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm not on Facebook, but I might get there.
And maybe not.
Maybe not.
No loss if you don't. I tell you, I actually love the interaction. I keep up with my children and family there.
Yeah.
But if it were not
I can understand that.
Yeah. If it weren't for that, then probably not.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
There's
different options.
Cool stuff on my website in terms of, the ghost stories, and that are kind of fun for people to read that are on there. And there's a couple of essays that I wrote about Thoreau and his one's about transcendentalism and one about Thoreau's politics, which is kind of fun. That I was writing in the midst of the channeling, so they were partly channeled. So at least
that is
the
fun.
Politics one was. So
I just don't know. I would be interested. I did not see the one on politics. I should have.
Oh yeah, that one.
I will go back and look for that specifically.
Classic. That was a lot of fun for me because it was like suddenly there was this, the theme of the new, every year they have a Thoreau Society gathering, and the gathering was going to be the politics of Thoreau. And I sat there and I was suddenly like raving, what politics of Thoreau? Thoreau wasn't political, I was just sort of having a fit. And in my apartment at the time. And it was so funny because at a certain point they just kind of tapped me on the shoulder and they're like, okay, you're going to write about this. You're going to write an essay here about this. I'm like, no, I don't want to. I hate writing essays. And they're just do it. So it became.
You're channeling an essayist.
Yeah.
You're going to write an essay.
You're going to sit here and write an essay. And they won't publish it. They're not going to publish it. They took one on transcendentalism that I had written because it went into the honorary issue about Brad, but. I'm like, they're not going to publish it. Oh, they will. They kept assuring me, oh, yeah, they will. You're going to write it, and they're going to take it. And, of course, they did. So it was fun. So. The most fun part of that was that I wasn't at the computer with my eyes closed with my hands on the keyboard, which is typically how I would quote channel. I was sitting on the sofa going okay, because I literally said to them, okay, if I have to do it, I'm doing it right here. So I'm doing it from the sofa. I pick up a piece of paper and a pen. Go ahead, tell me what you want me to say. And boy, they did. So
that's hilarious. Go ahead and rebel. You're doing this anyway.
Yeah. I would. Yeah. It was a lot of fun with them all the time. So it was entertaining.
Well, anyway, I think you were entertaining them as well.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. So.
Well, would you do it again?
Around, which is,
Would you go through this whole process again if the opportunity presents?
Yes, I guess I would. And I've had little hints of it. They're kind of waiting until I get ready, but. That there'll be more, not necessarily Thoreau, but I'm told there are several people lining up, want their chance. I'm like, okay, well,
you are right there in the heart of that period writers.
Yeah. Yep.
So the odds are very good that Louisa May show up and say, I had some other thoughts.
She did come through a couple times during the channeling.
Did she really? I just tossed that out there. That is fun.
One of them might have met the cutting room floor here, but I think there's some of her in here, in the astral chapter. But, yeah, it was all really fun the whole time, and I would get images of them over there, which was kind of interesting because I would see they were just kind of sitting around a room, almost like you'd be sitting waiting for your next doctor's appointment or something. It was like people were just like sitting around, just kind of like looking, watching this happening, and being amused by it, and it was really something. So.
That is really something.
Yeah.
So
I tell you, it was magic. But they are still around, which brings me to something. I did want to talk about the experience in Booth Bay Harbor because it involved them in a sense. I refer to them and other guides that I'm assuming has come in to offer their 2 cents. I refer to them as my spirit posse. Mm-hmm. So every now and then I'll go, well, let me check with the spirit posse and see what they have to say about something. And I did that one when I was with my boyfriend at the time, and we were in Booth Bay Harbor, and we had just gone on a little ghost tour that, they have the ghost tours there. And the inn that we were staying in was on the tour. And so, we learned on the tour that, the inn was supposed to be haunted by the woman that was the wife of the captain that once owned the inn, and, yada, yada. So we get back, and I was like, we're sitting out on the deck out front. They had this really nice porch on the inn. And I said, I really want to tune in here. I want to see what, I can find out about the hauntings. And my boyfriend at the time, he's like, yeah, you do your thing, whatever. Like, he's like sort of a skeptic. He's like, okay, honey, do whatever you want. So I go in there and I tuned in, and it wasn't that I saw the ghosts. It was that my posse told me all about it. They told me who was there and why, and let me kind of see different images. And one of the things I picked up on really strongly was the death of a baby. And when I wrote about this later, what I did is I learned all the different facts, and then the next morning I went down and I spoke to the innkeeper and said, is this true about the family that owned the thing? And she was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I think so, but you could talk to so-and-so, whatever. And I ended up getting on Ancestry.com, tracing the history of the family, finding out that the names, like I had come up with the name Abigail, and I found out there was an Abigail, and I looked, and she did have a child that died, as a baby, and and several other facts came up, and then there was a daughter, and I had seen an image of a baby, and I had seen a younger woman with a child who was more like 3 or 4 or something. Anyway, long story short, so I was able to confirm much of what I had seen and some of the names in that. So I felt pretty good about that, and I wrote about it on the website. And then Greg Latimer, who happened to be married to the woman who had given us the ghost tour, and he's a guy that writes books on ghosts of that region, and so he wrote a book called Ghosts of the Booth Bay Region, and he included my story in it because he went to the family that is still left in that area and interviewed them and see if he could get confirmation on what I had found. And the key thing with the baby was that I kept saying to my boyfriend, like, there's a baby that died, like crib death. It was like immediate. This baby wasn't sick. It wasn't, they just died. I mean, I couldn't figure out what the story was. And it turned out it was a very tragic, very sad story, which had to do with the mother trying to quiet the baby because the Indians were coming around the house. And she was trying to hide. And I can't even say the words, so we'll just let everybody draw the conclusion.
Right.
But so that's how the baby had died, and that's why it was so instant and everything. And there's more to it, but it was a lot of fun, and in terms of investigating it and finding it out to all be true. But this was a lot of the information I had gotten again came to me through the Spirit Posse. So it was very interesting.
They keep you in line, don't they?
It's fun. it's interesting. They're not always around because I'm not always, open to it. But when I am, they come through. So,
that is so funny because I have what I have been told, and I feel our grandmothers here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very funny because we don't have very much time, but I'll just say that after my father passed and we brought his mother's things that he had to my home, they were on one side of our house and my mother-in-law's things were on the other side of our downstairs. And for the longest time, after we had both of their things here, there was such noise downstairs.
Mm.
I mean, weird noise.
Yeah.
And it was like we would hear the door to the garage side open and somebody coming up the stairs, and all the dogs would turn around and look at me like, what do we do?
Yeah.
I said, eat them. If they open that door, you eat them. Nobody's going to ask any questions. You just take care of that, okay? And nobody would ever open the door.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't go down the stairs either. And at that time, my office was downstairs. So I would be downstairs broadcasting, and I have a foosball table that my exercise ball was sitting up on top of because I use it more than I play foosball anymore. And it just fell right off the foosball table. And I was like, you cannot do that while I'm working.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cannot do that. So
that's important that you speak up to them.
Absolutely. Because they are some feisty little ladies. And it was so funny. I actually had a friend of mine who is a fairly famous person for her abilities. And she called me one day and she said, are you okay? I said, I am okay. How are you? Nice to hear you, And she said, no, there is a little lady. Actually, she's not. She's tall. She's standing behind you, and she's got a deep, raspy voice. And she is just really worried about you. I said, that's my grandma. I must have done something that ticked her off. I'm sorry. And she was like, no, she's just worried. So our spirit posse is out there. And they do look after you sometimes. And other times they're trying to figure out, what on earth are you thinking?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. That's about right for me. But, I'm not the only one who has the spirit posse. We all have our guides around us, as you know.
We do. We do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are funny.
Yes.
But, we are almost out of time. I am going to have you come back. I think that this has been a great show, and I have enjoyed you so much.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed being here. This is great.
So for everyone listening, thank you so much. Y'all are the reason that we do these shows, and I am so proud to be representing Fate Mag. I can't believe that the magazine has been in print for over 60 years, and here we are still doing all the things that matter. And
it doesn't mean to interrupt. I was want to say, I used to subscribe to Fate magazine, 30 years ago, something like that.
You should renew.
I know I'm going to renew, and I loved it. And I'm so excited to be on the show, partly because of that. So it's exciting.
Thank you. Well, it's a great magazine. And, just if you're listening on fatemag.com, hit the subscribe button while you're there. And if you're listening through another venue, go to www.fatemag.com and subscribe. It's still wonderful. We have got some of the best writers contributing, and you just never know what you're going to find. So that being said, I will be back next week with another episode of Fate Magazine, Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, with my guest, Jim Mallard, who is a radio host himself. He has interviewed some of the most fascinating people. He has been a paranormal investigator. Mainly, he is a husband and a dad and a fine man. Y'all are going to love him. He has got some info for you. Tomorrow night is going to be The Paranormal Pride with Denise Pridemore. Wednesday, I will be here with my guest on Paranormal Experienced Radio. Thursday is Periscope Uncensored. Friday is the big one, Paraversal Universe at 5 p.m. Eastern, followed an hour after they go off at 8 Eastern by Ghost Talk Radio, followed immediately by Ghost Talk is Shelley Burke Robertson. Need to let you know that because she's astounding. Followed by Seraphine Hernley, Trippin' the Void. So y'all have a great week. Have a great night. Happy Mother's Day to everyone who has that title. And thanks for being here. We will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.